Good evening, it's Monday the 7th of April and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. US protests, millions rally in hands-off march against Trump and Musk's power grab. Diplomatic reset, France and Algeria reignite talks to heal years of hostility. Back to sea, giant loggerhead turtle Lenny released after full recovery.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Aquil Qureshi.
Good evening once again. Hundreds of thousands across 50 US states participated in hands-off protests against President Donald Trump and Elon Musk opposing government budget cuts and policy changes affecting federal workers and immigrants.
From marching through Atlanta to rallying in downtown Chicago and protesting in front of Minnesota's state capitol. Millions of Americans took to the streets to denounce Donald Trump and Elon Musk in over 1,200 locations across all 50 states, the largest nationwide show of opposition since Trump took office. Here in New York, thousands walked down Fifth Avenue to say hands off their freedoms. Demonstrators nationwide voiced anger over the Trump administration's handling of immigration, mass cuts to social and educational programs, the state of the economy, foreign policy, and scaling back protections for the people. One particular grievance was Elon Musk's role in government with Doge, despite being unelected.
A lot of what's happening seems to be corrupt division of power that's not being followed with the founding fathers and what they intended for this country. Doge running without any kind of oversight.
In Washington, organizers say around 10,000 people turned out to voice their discontent, and they were joined by Democratic lawmakers. The hands-off protest movement wasn't just limited to the US, also erupting across the pond in several European cities in support.
The United States has commenced collecting a 10% tariff on imports, a move that disturbs global trade norms and has prompted concerns among international partners about potential economic repercussions.
U.S. Customs agents on Saturday began collecting President Donald Trump's unilateral 10% tariff on imports from several countries. The initial baseline tariff took effect at U.S. seaports, airports, and customs warehouses at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time, ushering in Trump's full rejection of the post-World War II system of mutually agreed tariff rates. Higher levies on duties from 57 larger trading partners are due to start in the coming days. Trump's tariff announcement days earlier shook global stock markets, wiping out $5 trillion in stock market value for S&P 500 companies by Friday's close, a record two-day decline. Prices for oil and commodities plunged, while investors fled to the safety of government bonds. Among the countries first hit with the 10% tariff are Australia, Britain, Colombia, Argentina, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. This Wednesday, Trump's higher reciprocal tariff rates of 11% to 50% are due to take effect. European Union imports will be hit with a 20% tariff, while Chinese goods will be hit with a 34% tariff, bringing Trump's total new levies on China to 54%. Trump on social media Saturday told Americans, quote, "This is an economic revolution and we will win. Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic." Some world leaders moved quickly to strike a deal with Trump to avert economic disruption, while others weighed countermeasures. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to visit the White House on Monday, sources said, as unspecified goods from the country face a 17% tariff under the new policy. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba was reportedly seeking a telephone conversation with Trump. Tokyo faces a 24% levy. Trump is excluding goods that are subject to separate 25% national security tariffs, including steel and aluminum, cars, trucks, and auto parts.
China and Cambodia conducted joint military exercises at a newly expanded Ream naval base, raising regional security concerns among neighboring countries and international observers.
China and Cambodia marked a significant military milestone this weekend, launching joint military exercises just one day after the official inauguration of the expanded Ream Naval Base. The drills, involving warships from both countries, focused on formation maneuvering. Analysts say future exercises are likely to grow in complexity, involving land and air operations, and framed by Chinese outlets as vital for ensuring peace and stability in the contested South China Sea. The base's strategic location and recent expansion, partially funded by Beijing, have drawn scrutiny from the United States. Washington fears Ream could evolve into a Chinese military outpost, threatening the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. China began rotating military vessels through Ream in 2022 after the start of the upgrade project, which followed Cambodia's decision to demolish a US-funded building at the site. Cambodia insists no exclusive agreement exists with China, claiming that the base remains open to foreign vessels from all nations. However, with the addition of a new pier capable of accommodating larger warships, international observers remain wary. The Cambodian Prime Minister and a senior delegation from China's People's Liberation Army attended Saturday's inauguration, cementing what both countries described as deepening military ties in a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape.
Pakistan announced plans to expel 3 million Afghan refugees this year, following the expiration date of deadline for voluntary departures, a move that has drawn criticism from human rights organizations.
Benazir Raofi runs a restaurant in Rawalpindi. She came to Pakistan as a 13-year-old when her family fled Afghanistan's civil war in the 1990s. Raofi says she has no one to return to in Afghanistan and that being deported would kill her. She's not the only one who fears a life back under the Taliban regime, where women are banned from studying and visiting certain public spaces. Many who live in this refugee camp on the outskirts of Islamabad were born here or are married to Pakistanis. They too are facing expulsion. The government says the measure is necessary for national security, but rights groups say it will just make the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan even worse. Afghans living in Pakistan say they face constant persecution and harassment from the police.
South Korea's Constitutional Court removed President Yoon Suk-yeol from office after his short-lived declaration of martial law, following controversial military deployment that triggered protests and political chaos.
Friday's verdict may have brought closure to a case that plunged the nation into political upheaval, but for these protesters, the fight isn't over. Hundreds of supporters of the former South Korean president braved the rain on Saturday to protest the confirmation of his impeachment by the Constitutional Court. Waving American flags and sporting MAGA-inspired caps, many of Yoon Suk-yeol's conservative supporters see parallels with events in the US. And while the ruling likely marks the end of Yoon's political career, he leaves behind a particularly polarized nation, a separate protest taking place on Saturday to celebrate his ousting. Yoon's declaration of martial law back in December sent shockwaves through the country as he ordered the military to storm the parliament to prevent lawmakers from gathering. He's now the second president to be ousted by the Constitutional Court, but his legal troubles are far from over. In a separate case, he still faces charges of leading an insurrection, a crime punishable by life imprisonment or even death. The ruling sets up a presidential election within 2 months. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will stay on as acting president until a new leader is sworn in.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. In response to the controversial US tariffs, European Union ministers have convened to coordinate a unified strategy that includes both diplomatic negotiations and potential retaliatory measures to safeguard European economic interests.
European Union countries will look to present a united front against U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, likely approving retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. imports. The move, expected in the coming days, would tax a range of U.S. goods, from dental floss to diamonds. By doing so, the EU would join China and Canada in imposing retaliatory tariffs, potentially escalating a global trade war that could make goods more expensive for billions of consumers and push economies around the world into recession. The 27-nation bloc faces 25% import tariffs on steel, aluminum, and cars, and as of last week, reciprocal tariffs of 20% for almost all other goods. Trump's tariffs cover some 70% of the EU's exports to the U.S., which last year were worth a total of $585 billion. U.S. duties on copper, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and timber from the EU are likely still to come. The European Commission, which coordinates EU trade policy, will on Monday propose a list of U.S. products to hit with extra duties in response to Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. But among EU members, there are differing opinions on how to respond. France has said the EU should work on a package going well beyond tariffs, with President Emmanuel Macron suggesting European companies suspend investments in the U.S. until, quote, things are clarified. Ireland, almost a third of whose exports go to the U.S., has called for a considered and measured response. And Italy, the EU's third largest exporter to the U.S., has questioned whether the EU should hit back at all. The initial EU counter tariffs will be put to a vote on Wednesday.
Amid a fragile US-brokered ceasefire, Russia and Ukraine have escalated the exchange of strikes, testing the limits of the truce and fueling fresh concerns about regional instability.
Ukrainians in the city of Kryvyi Rih were mourning on Saturday after deadly Russian attacks the day before. 9 children were among at least 19 people killed in President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown, according to local officials. It was one of Moscow's deadliest this year in the conflict. A missile hit a residential area, killing 18 people and sparking fires, according to the region's governor. Authorities said Russian drones later attacked homes and killed another person. Officials also said the strikes left dozens hospitalized, including a 3-month-old baby. Russia's defense ministry said it had targeted a military gathering and denied attacking civilians. The Ukrainian military denounced Moscow's statement as misinformation. Meanwhile, an industrial facility in Russia's Volga River region of Mordovia was hit by drone strikes on Saturday, though the region's governor confirmed the incident on Telegram without naming the facility. Media reports said it was a fiber optic factory. It came as Moscow accused Ukraine of stepping up strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, saying there had been 6 attacks over the past 24 hours. Ukraine's military said Moscow's reports were fake and that its forces were only striking military targets. The two sides agreed last month to a US proposal to halt strikes on each other's energy infrastructure for 30 days. Both have since repeatedly accused each other of violating the deal.
In a significant thaw of long-standing tensions, France and Algeria have re-engaged in high-level diplomatic discussions aimed at resolving economic and security disputes, marking a hopeful step towards normalizing bilateral relations.
Relations between France and Algeria, which have rarely been warm, have turned markedly icy over the past few months, chilled by diplomatic crises, political arrests, and spats over immigration. The current crisis was sparked when French President Emmanuel Macron recognized Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara in July 2024. Until then, France's position had been aligned with the United Nations, which considers it a non-self-governing territory. Hailed as a major diplomatic victory by Morocco, the move was seen as a historic betrayal by Algeria, which has supported the Polisario Front fighting for independence. Tensions were further aggravated by this year's arrests and trials of multiple Algerian social media influencers for hate speech and advocating violence, often against those who have been critical of the Algerian government. On the other side, France has been irritated by the arrest of Franco-Algerian writer Boualem Sansal in Algeria. In March, Sansal was sentenced to 5 years in prison for comments he made over territorial disputes involving Morocco, Algeria, and France. The largest thorn in diplomatic relations, however, has been immigration. About 650,000 Algerians lived in France in 2024, constituting the largest foreign nationality. France has tried to deport many who have come over illegally, as well as those who have committed crimes, but Algeria has repeatedly refused to accept repatriation. This gained widespread attention in February when an Algerian national that Algeria refused to take back went on a stabbing spree in Mulhouse, killing 1 and wounding 6. Algerian nationals have enjoyed special immigration exceptions in terms of residence and employment since 1968, a few years after Algeria gained independence from France. But the lack of cooperation on deportations, coupled with pressure from high-ranking French politicians, has led French Prime Minister François Bayrou to threaten to revise these immigration accords, revoke privileges for diplomats, and re-examine the entire Franco-Algerian diplomatic relationship.
Israel's resumption of airstrikes in Gaza has led to dozens of casualties in the region, intensifying the humanitarian crisis and drawing international calls for restraint.
This pavilion in Khan Yunis has become a funeral parlour. Every day, new victims of Israeli strikes are laid out here. Every day, another family mourns their losses. Among the white shrouds, one is different. A body lying under a press vest. Islam Maqdad's name will be added to the ever-growing list of journalists killed in this war, at least 173 confirmed by the Committee to Protect Journalists. It's by far the deadliest ever conflict for reporters. As Palestinians weep for their loved ones, the scale of the grief is matched by anger towards Israel, but also regional leaders who they accuse of failing to act. French President Emmanuel Macron is due to have talks with leaders from Egypt and Jordan in Cairo on Monday, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet the US President in Washington. But there seems to be little sign of a new ceasefire. Israel has been stepping up its operations in the enclave. As well as renewed bombardments, its ground troops are capturing territory. Palestinians fear it's part of a plan to depopulate Gaza. Israel says it will continue escalating until the remaining Israeli hostages are freed and Hamas is eliminated. For now, the strikes continue relentlessly.
In a historic move towards peace, the Colombian guerrilla faction Comuneros del Sur has signed an accord to disarm, representing a breakthrough in ending decades of internal conflict.
A Colombian armed group took a major step towards peace on Saturday as it signed historic agreements with the government to stop fighting. The Comuneros del Sur was previously a faction of the leftist National Liberation Army, or ELN rebels. The Colombian government released video showing the group surrendering weapons and explosives and the war materials being destroyed. The video was shown during a ceremony in Pasto City. Comuneros del Sur leader Royer Gazon said the group is handing in its arms to show its desire for peace. We believe that the armed struggle is outdated, that there are new times and new needs, Gazon said. We refuse to return to war, he added. Colombian President Gustavo Petro called the peace deal crucial. He said violence in the country today is driven by illicit economies rather than ideology, and hit out at the ELN rebels, saying they weren't local but instead connected to Mexican cartels. Saturday's agreements pave the way for eventual disarmament and reincorporation of some 300 Comuneros del Sur fighters into civilian life. It's the most significant step toward peace since Petro took office in 2022, with plans to end Colombia's internal conflicts. But analysts have said Petro's other peace efforts with ELN, FARC factions and criminal gangs have shown little progress.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. In a heartwarming tribute, a family meticulously recreated a vintage scene from old photographs to celebrate their grandfather's milestone birthday, capturing nostalgic memories and intergenerational love. Take a look.
This isn't just any birthday party. That's Dave Squilla sitting there, celebrating his 70th with a twist. A blast from his past, featuring his family. All 9 of his grandkids surprising him, dressing up as versions of him over the years. As a little boy, all grown up as Dad, and now their Papa, to the delight of the family and to so many others. Their video getting more than 10 million views online. It meant the world to his wife, Marlene. She and their daughter, Amy, were the brains behind the camera, finding the photos and putting the family to work. On the big day, a quick change after dinner before the big debut. It's not just Dave's family trying this trend. The Harrises in South Carolina showed out for their grandpa's 80th.
Oh my God.
And the Webb family in Tennessee dressed up as 7 eras of their grandpa. For so many, including the Squillas, it's all about committing to the bit. And maybe a new birthday tradition filled with love and laughter.
After successful rehabilitation, Lenny, the renowned giant loggerhead turtle, has been released back into his natural habitat, underscoring ongoing marine conservation efforts and resilience of endangered species. Take a look.
It all centered on this crucial moment. But before this majestic creature of the sea was returned to the water, the loggerhead sea turtle named Lenny faced an uncertain future even after 6 to 7 decades of life. That's underwater photographer Mike Papish, who rescued Lenny last month from a reef in the Florida Keys. Lenny is believed to have survived a shark attack that left him with a badly damaged flipper. With some help, Mike rushed the 322-pound marine reptile to the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida. The team worked around the clock to save the largest loggerhead they've ever seen. Lenny, now much better thanks to his new friends,
1, 2, 3,
headed back into the turtle ambulance.
It's okay, Lenny.
To return where this journey first started. Then, it happened.
Well, that's a wrap right here on World News Tonight. Stay tuned as we've got Prashansa Gunawardana, who'll join you shortly on Nightly Business Report. I'm Akwil Qureshi, and we're leaving you with the likes of scenes from Qatar's skylights up during the Lusail Festival. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.